Hello everybody. Today we'll see a short summary of William Butler Yeats' poem Easter 1916. About the poet W B Yeats. Yeats is an Irish poet. He was a foremost figure in Irish literary movement and a prominent figure in the formation of Abbey Theatre. This poem is about the emotions of the poet regarding the events of Easter Rising. Easter Rising 1916. Easter Rising was an armed rising in Ireland during 1916. It was launched during the First World War period by Irish Republicans and was aimed at ending British rule in Ireland and establishing an independent Irish Republic. The Easter Rising began on April 24, 1916, Monday, and lasted for 6 days. The battles continued in the streets. British suppressed the rising, and the people who led the rebellion were arrested, and some leaders were even executed. Statistics say that around 485 people were killed in the Easter Rising. Moving on to a recital of the poem Easter 1916. I have met them at the close of the day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk, among grey 18th century houses. I have passed with the nod of the head, or polite, meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite, meaningless words, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or jibe to please a companion around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where mortally is worn, all changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. That women's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers when young and beautiful? She rode to harriers. This man had kept us cool and rode our winged horse. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This other man I had dreamed, a drunken, vainglorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart. Yet I number him in the song. He too has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Hearts with one purpose alone, through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud. Minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and a horse plashes within it. The long-legged moor hens dive, and hens to moor cocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stones in the midst of all. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part, our part to murmur name upon a name. As a mother names her child when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, no, not night, but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith for all that is done and said. We know they dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I write it out in a verse. Macdonagh and Macbride and Connolly and Pierce, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. I have met them at the close of the day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head or polite meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe, to please a companion around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where motley is worn, all changed, changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. So Yeats mentions some of the people he meets at the close of the day. So as the day is coming to a close, or as the day is coming to an end, he meets all sort of people with vivid faces. All these people are his acquaintances. They may be coming after a whole day's work from the grey 18th century houses. Okay, he exchanges polite, meaningless words with them, just like where are you going, or what is up now. Such silly questions he exchanges with them just to acknowledge their meeting. Okay, he might tell a mocking tale to make a companion laugh at the club. His conversations are all superficial. He doesn't have a tinge of sincerity when he exchanges such superficial talks with them. But suddenly there is reference to something that changed everything. So this was his attitude to people who come and talk to him. He had just a superficial relationship. He will exchange a polite, meaningless words with them, or just a nod of the head. But then he didn't have a sincere relationship with them. Something happened all of a sudden which changed all these things, and a terrible beauty is born. That women's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument, until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers when young and beautiful she rode to harriers? This man had kept a school and rode a winged horse. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. He is talking about some lady here, and the lady referred to here is Countess Constance Markievicz, who had participated in the Irish uprising. He is saying that she had a very beautiful voice when she was young, but then she started participating in politics, and continuous arguments made her voice shrill. And the next reference here is to a man who had kept a school, and the reference here is to Patrick Pearse and his friend Thomas MacDonagh, because it is mentioned here this man had kept a school and rode a winged horse, and this other his helper and friend. So there were two people, a man who kept a school and another man who was his friend. So the two people referred to here are Patrick Pearse and his friend Thomas MacDonagh. He was so good-natured man. The second guy was a very good-natured man, and he was sensitive too, but got killed before he could become famous. He might have won fame in the end. It is very sure that he might have become famous in the end. He might have shown some poetic skills, so he was sure to be famous. So sensitive his nature seemed. He was very sensitive in his nature also, but so daring and sweet his thought. His ideas and his thoughts were also very daring and sweet. But before he could become famous, he was swept away in that Irish rebellion. This other man I had dreamed, a drunken, vain, glorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart. Yet I number him in the song. He too has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. Next mention is about a man who was not straight in his life. He was a drunkard, and he has done most bitter wrong to people whom Yeats loved. The reference here is to Major John McBride. Major John McBride married Morgan. Morgan was Yeats' love for years. Yeats and Morgan were in love, but they didn't marry. She got married to Major McBride, but their marital relationship was not that smooth. They had all sorts of problems, and since he was a drunkard, their relationship was not that smooth. And Yeats mentions here that Major John McBride caused pain to Maud Gonne, to people who are near my heart. The reference here is to Maud Gonne. And since he caused pain to her, he doesn't feel good about this particular guy. But even then, he remembers him in the song because he has given up his life for an Irish cause, and therefore he remembers him in this particular poem. Though the personal likes, dislikes and vengeances doesn't come in way of him accepting the patriotic feelings in Major John McBride. Hearts with one purpose alone through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud, minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim and a horse splashes within it. The long-legged moorhens dive and hence to moorcocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stone is in the midst of all. So he is talking about the brave fighters here. Though seasons change, everything in the nature changes. The heart of these fighters, their strong will, remains like a stone, unchanging. The entire nature is subject to change, right? Seasons change, summer and winter comes, the horse that comes from the road changes, the rider changes, the birds that change, birds flying in the sky changes, the clouds, birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud, they change the clouds, the birds fly on different clouds. Minute by minute, everything is changing in the nature. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. Even the shadow of this cloud also changes. A horse hoof slides on the brim and a horse splashes within it. The long-legged moorhens dive and hence to moorcocks call. So nature is all powerfully flowing. Nothing is affecting nature. Nature is taking its own flow, right? The hens dive into the water to call the hens, and minute by minute they are living their life. Nature is living their life. Nature is not at all affected by the Irish rebellion. Nature is not standing still and watching the Irish rebellion. Nature is moving, and the Irish people are also very strong, very stone-like, and they are fighting for the cause of the nation. Stone is in the midst of all. Even in the midst of this entirely changing nature, stone remains there as stone itself. There is no change that is happening to the stone. So that's what is mentioned here. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part. Our part to murmur name upon name as a mother names her child, when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, not nightfall, but death. Was it needless death after all? So it was too long a sacrifice. Okay, it was a very big sacrifice. It took so much time. And he is wondering, when will this whole uprising end? When will this all sacrifice ends? How much stronger sacrifice does it demand? Okay, or when will this sacrifice be sufficient enough to win the freedom? It is heaven's part to decide when will this bloodshed should end. But our part is to murmur name upon name, is to remember these people who had sacrificed their lives for Ireland. Our role is just to remember them and mourn their death, just like a mother who mourns for her dead child. Okay, a mother's weeping for a child will be the most sincere one. So we also should remember our patriots, our martyrs, our freedom fighters with the same amount of sincerity as a mother remembers her dead child. Okay. When sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild, the child who was very naughty has run wild so long, and at last when death comes on him, the mother is so sad, so she is lamenting his name always. And that is the amount of sincerity we should show when we mention our freedom fighter's name. Okay. What is it but nightfall? Is it nightfall that is coming? Nightfall is compared to death here. No, 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 not night, but death. Death is so hard, so cold, so dark. So death is compared to night here. But it is not night, it is deeper, it is harder, it is colder than night, it is death. Was it needless death after all? Anyway, England is going to give you freedom after World War I. They had promised that they'd give you freedom after World War I. So you would have waited for 2 years and won freedom like that. Instead of fighting and sacrificing and giving up your lives for the nation, you could have waited for 2 more years and accepted freedom when British was willingly giving it. Why fight for it, and why needlessly fight for it when you are anyway going to get the freedom? So this is a different thought process that the poet is undergoing here, because he knows that, or he respects people who has given up their life, but then he at times is disturbed by the futility of the war. War causes nothing but death. It leaves many families helpless. It leaves many children fatherless. So what is the gain that you get from a war? There is nothing that war gains for you. You won't get freedom from war, but you lose many citizens in war. So anyways, if you are going to get freedom in a period of 2 years, why fight for it now? So this thought process may not be acceptable to a patriot, but to a normal human being, he thinks, after all, why fight for freedom like this? Is it an endless fight? Is it an endless death? Or should he have died for some better reason? So that is how the poet thinks here. For England may keep faith for all that is done and said. We know their dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what of excess of love bewildered them till they died? I write it out in a verse, Macdonagh and Macbride, and Connolly and Pierce, and now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, or changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. So England is going to give you freedom anyway. England is going to keep its promise anyway. We know what our freedom fighters dreamed and how intense was their dream. But now they dreamed of freedom. They didn't live to see the freedom. Now they are dead. The poet is thinking the excess love these patriots had for Ireland made them blind, and they did useless things out of the blind love for Ireland. They would have intelligently thought and waited for 2 more years to see Ireland becoming independent, live in an independent Ireland, and then die. But instead, they were so eager to win their freedom that they lost their life even before Ireland won its freedom. So Yeats is saying that you will not be forgotten by the people, because I am going to write you here in verse. Every person who reads this poem, even after centuries, is going to remember you through my lines. So you are going to be remembered as great patriots of Ireland who won Ireland the freedom from England. I am going to write all your names here. MacDonagh, McBride, Connolly, Pierce, everyone's name I am going to write here. And you will be remembered for so many centuries. Wherever green is worn, you will be remembered. Green is the color of Ireland, and so whenever people see green, they'll remember you guys. Now, let's discuss the meaning of the phrase terrible beauty. The phrase terrible beauty reveals its entire meaning here in the last paragraph. Because he has confused feeling for the fighters. He feels sorry, he feels proud, he feels that the blind love these people had for Ireland made them do useless things. On the one hand, he admires them for the patriotism they showed. He admired them for the selfless love they showed for their country. He admires them for the warrior spirit in them. But on the other hand, he feels a kind of detachment. When he asks the question why or what did you gain out of this, he feels a kind of detachment. Because none of these people who fought for the freedom of Ireland could see a free Ireland. Though their next generation remembers them, they couldn't even have a glance of a free Ireland. Yeats here thinks about the futility of war, and when he thinks about the futility of war, he feels a kind of detachment. So that is the poem all about. Hope you enjoyed the session. It was a bit long a poem, but then it was so full of patriotic feelings, the futility of war, about the war heroes, but the hopeless deaths that war brings. Do like, share and subscribe if you'd like to listen to more such audios. Thank you.